One of the biggest complaints people raised about God of War 2018 was the lack of enemies. This is something I didn't notice in my first playthrough, but when I took into consideration the size and openness of God of War 2018, I couldn't help but agree with the criticism. Cory Barlog has explained in many interviews how there were things they couldn't do by the end of development due to lack of resources or simply not enough time. The one that hurts us fans the most is the COD boss battle with the Helheim bird, but I think we can also throw in lack of enemies as something the team couldn't do by the end of the project. Thankfully, Santa Monica has received a lot more resources from Sony to create the God of War experience they wanted to create all along, and one of the issues they seem to be addressing right away is the lack of enemies. Think about it, the trailer is only 3 minutes long and we've already seen the old enemies as well as new ones like the Stalker, the Inherjar, ones that look like orcs, light elves, and many more. Now, me being Kaptain Kuba, I am fascinated by the possible lore behind every single one of these characters, and I naturally start to come up with theories. I mean, what's up with light elves wielding swords that look like katanas? Cory did say that there's evidence of pantheons intermingling with each other. So maybe... Nah, I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole just yet. Instead, the new enemies I want to talk about are the frog creatures and how they might be connected with the Old Father himself. So let's begin.
When Freya had taught him magic, it always seemed he was only humoring her. But he must have studied further, for Odin came up with a particularly creative and cruel spell.
Hey, how's it going guys, Kaptain Kuba here, and today I'm gonna be talking about the frog creatures we got a glimpse at in the God of War Ragnarok trailer. And I know at first these creatures might sound like a joke. I mean, Kratos has fought trolls, cyclops, centaurs, gods, and now he has to fight frogmen? I know this enemy type sounds funny when you compare it side by side with other enemies, but hopefully by the end of this video, I will at least get you to feel sorry for them. Now, the idea of humanoid frog creatures doesn't actually originate from Norse mythology. The closest I could get to a record of these creatures is to the Siyukoi creature of Philippine mythology. Green-skinned humanoids with scales, fins, and webbed limbs. All of the characteristics needed to form a frogman. But I doubt these creatures came all the way from the Philippines and somehow used the realm travel bridge to arrive in Svartalfheim. Instead, I think these creatures could be from the region of Scandinavia, and the reason we don't recognize them is because Santa Monica has changed their appearance to make them original to the God of War universe. It might just be that this is Santa Monica's interpretation of the Tomti, the gnome from Nordic folklore. If this is the case, Santa Monica has made them a little taller than a gnome and much more scary. But if you ask me, I don't think these theories are likely. I think these enemies are completely new creatures Santa Monica has created for God of War Ragnarok in order to add verticality to combat. In the trailer, we saw Kratos using his blades to grapple up a ledge. So in order to level the playing field, Santa Monica has created frog creatures that could leap to these ledges as well. Now, just because these are new monsters created to add depth to combat, it doesn't mean that Santa Monica hasn't written any lore for them. But for that, we'll have to wait until the game comes out to find out what it is. However, in the meantime, I can give you my theory on where I think these frog creatures came from. Now let me ask you this, isn't it interesting that we only see these creatures in Svartalfheim, and they're about the same size as an adult dwarf? You see where I'm going with this, right? I believe these frog creatures are nothing but experiments Odin has done with the dwarven population using the dangerous seer magic taught to him by Freya.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay!
This wouldn't be the first time Odin has experimented with seer magic. In God of War 2018, Sigrun informs Kratos and Atreus how Odin used magic to imprison the Valkyrie spirits into physical bodies that resulted in them turning into monsters.
He used an archaic piece of magic, corrupting my sisters. I tried to contain the damage by imprisoning them in places where they could cause no harm, but soon I lost myself as well.
This is why I don't find it out of character if Odin were to secretly experiment with the dwarven population to turn them into monsters ready to fight by his side. Even Mimir says that Odin's usage of magic rivals that of his teacher, Freya, and could possibly be even greater.
But Odin's madness, his tyranny, his corruption of her magics, it became more than she could stomach, and at long last she broke it off. Odin's wrath was fierce, and his curses upon her were more than she dared to fear.
But her magic was so much stronger than his.
After so much time together, he knew her vulnerabilities and exploited them to craft curses she could never break.
An example of this is recorded in lore and legends. According to the timeline, 125 years prior to the events of God of War 2018, Odin and Freya grew apart as Odin became more obsessed with Ragnarok. He also experimented with seer magic in nasty new ways, which Freya found disturbing. This reference to Freya finding his experiments disturbing is interesting, because she would later reanimate the corpse of a dead giant using seer magic, something that I find a little disturbing to say the least. Which makes me wonder, what exactly was Odin doing with magic that Freya found so disturbing? Sadly, lore and legends doesn't tell us, and we'll probably have to wait for an official prequel story to find out. But in the meantime, I like to believe that what Freya found so disturbing was Odin experimenting with the dwarves to make these creatures. Obviously this would have been done in secrecy so as to not raise any alarms. It will be interesting if in God of War Ragnarok we go to Svartalfheim and we meet dwarves whose family members have been kidnapped by an unknown creature of the night, never to be seen again. And later in the game, we learn that it was Odin all along shapeshifting to hide his identity so he could do his evil Norse mythology science experiments on the dwarven population. I know it's a little far-fetched, but Odin experimenting with magic is something that I've made sure to prove in this video. Also, don't forget that Svartalfheim is one of the realms Odin visits the most given his agreement with the dwarves. And he's also always looking to expand his army in order to come out victorious in Ragnarok, so maybe it's not too crazy after all. All I know is that I'm really excited for all the new lore behind the new enemies of God of War Ragnarok, including the funniest looking one, the Frogman. But definitely let me know in the comment section below what you think about this theory. Are you as interested in these frog creatures as I am? Also, what do you think Odin was doing with seer magic that Freya found so disturbing? Make sure to let me know in the comment section below. For my next video, I think I'll finally tackle the question of the two timelines, or what exactly happened in the first timeline of the Norse pantheon. So if you're interested in that video, as well as other God of War content, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of all of my uploads. As always, I want to thank all of my members for supporting this channel monthly. I still find it mind-boggling that people like my videos enough that they are willing to support the channel with their hard-earned money. People like Nafad Frizelli, Jesse's Ray's Barbecue, and Sully, to name a few, are truly a big reason this channel is still going strong. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. It doesn't seem like much, but it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching, and remember, go forth in the name of Ragnarok.